Welcome to XAct emulation construction. The construction process is strictly top-down. Through formal interviews, the information collected will populate the two first views, organizational and business service views. The first covers the structure of the business and the service volume parameter. The second covers the business service flow and its layered logic. The last view is the business service implementation and covers the transformation of organizational service and views into physical implementation. Once the three views are populated, XAct will compute the baseline as well as a number of additional points where the volume will gradually increase to identify the chaos point. Let's begin by creating a new project. Projects are used to collect groups of work together. So let's click on New. We're going to call this on Web Catalog Emulation. Construction of emulation. And then we're going to say OK. Okay, the project was created. Now it's going to create a model. So I'm going to call this Catalog Emulator. And I'm going to say emulation of a web-based catalog lookup. And say OK. That creates a model, which takes us immediately to create our corporate model, or corporate view of a model. To do this, we need to define the corporate object, which that's what this first item is. So let's take a look at the fields that are needed. First off, we're going to give it a name. Let's call this Catco, just as a corporate name. We need to give it a number. This number is, as we stated earlier, is the business service volume parameter, which basically has to do with the things that drive the number of sessions or users. Since we're going to basically do a session here, let's say there are 100,000 users, and we're going to say we've got the type is users, 100,000. What we're going to show is an 8-hour period. So we put 8 hours, and we say OK. So it says that's created, and there we are. There's our Catco. So now we're going to add a business entity, which you click on and then drag off to create the business entity. So we're going to do a business entity. We're going to say 100%. We're going to call this Catalog Management. But since I'm going to do this as sessions, while there might be 100,000 users, how many sessions would we have from those 100,000 users in an 8-hour day? Well, let's say 10. I don't know. We'll make it 50,000 sessions, and we're going to call this user sessions. And you don't have to put a comment, and I'm not going to here. So we've got that. Now I'm going to create a business process And I'm going to name this business process typical user access. And I can give it a name. These are transactional. I'm not going to put an SLA on this. And I'm going to say OK. So now I've created a business process. So now we're going to go into the service view. And here we're going to add the sub-processes that make up a session. So I'm going to double click on this to open it. I have a start as a beginning point. I click on the start. Once you get the green box, you can left click, drag off, and it will create your next one. I'm going to create a process, and I'm going to call this process start session. Yeah. Or session start. I can't type. Session start. It's transactional. I don't need any of these other additional parameters at this point in time. 100% of what gets passed down is going to get passed on to this object, which is fine. The next part, after the session start, I'm going to drag another one off, and I'm going to have this be and this step is called session authenticate. Once again, transactional. Once again, 100%. Let's drag another one off for our next step, which is catalog selection. Same thing here. And lastly, we're going to add a last one called catalog search. Okay. So there we go. And then since this is the end of it, I'm going to put an end on here to show that this is the complete flow. Now, each one of these service processes can be driven down to provide more detail, to actually explain what goes on during these. So let's start with the session start. All right, so I expand it, and we have just a start in there. So if I move on to there, click and drag off a little bit, it'll create a new one. And I'm going to create a task. And we're going to call this one, this task, we're going to call it user user root, which is basically the user connecting, getting the first display. Once again, we're going to say 100% of it goes there, so we're going to create that. That's going to generate a message to the web server. So I'm going to add another task. I'm going to make this in a message, and we're going to call this UR message. Okay. Once again, we're keeping the utilization rates basically at 100%. Next, I'm going to add another task, and this task is called web root RCV for receive. It is logic, it is transactional, and we leave everything else the same as it is there as well. Then we're going to keep on going. We're going to have an application that sits behind the web server receive. This is a task as well, and we're going to call it web root app, and it is logic. So we say okay. Then the next step is we're going to send a message to the database Oops, I want a message. So I select message. And this one we're going to call SSMSG. Okay. The names are whatever you find useful to help you recognize what it is you're doing when you start looking to the results. Then after this, we need to have the message consuming side, which in this case is the database app, and it is a task, and we're going to call it DB root. And it is logic again, once again. Okay. Now you can see here that the model, we provide lots of different types of things. Not every model that you build in this tool is an IT model. So it may not be logic, it may not even be, it may be humans, it may be, in this case we have like governments and industries and insurance and banks and housings to show things, and we have transportation. So it can be lots of different kinds of things. All right, and then that's the last step in this piece of the process. So I'm going to say end. Okay, there we go. So this shows the definition of the first step in the process, or in the business process. Let's go to the next one, which is authentication. Now, authentication, all these have basically the same layout, but they use different components underneath. So first we're going to start out with a task that is, let's do okay, user authenticate and this is in essay. Let's put the essay at the beginning. Just kind of do that as a consistency thing. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. This once again is logic and it is transactional. So we'll do that. From that, I'm going to go do a message, which I'm going to call there. And then I'm going to add another one called, another task called web authenticate user. And I'm going to say, okay, this is the web server receiving the message from the user. And then I'm going to add another task, which is, let's call this one app authenticate user. Once again, logic. Let's move this over. And we're going to go add a message. This message goes from, goes to the database. So we need to add the database side to this. Another task called DB session auth. And we got that. And that is the last step of this, so we say end. Now this has only taken us down so far, and I guess I should have gone further in the previous one. Let's go back and do that. Or let's start with this one. So inside the SA, what do we call this? SA user authenticate, we're going to have an activity. And this activity is basically where we associate to something physical. This activity is the lowest level of the graphical display part, and we attach it to a physical event or physical component or whatever, human, whatever the case may be. So here we're going to put a server, let's see, server SA auth you. This is application at this point, which would be like the web browser. And then we're going to go here, and that's the only thing at this level, so we'll put an end on it. Okay. And then the next step over, we go into the Authenticate User, Web Authenticate User. So we're going to go here, we're going to add another activity, which is Web Auth. And this likewise is application. And you can see there are lots of different types at the activity level as well. You'll see here there's a place here where we associate an ACI, which is an application component instance, and you can have several ACIs associated, but at the moment we're not going to do that because ACI is where we attach to physical, and we haven't defined physical yet. We'll come back and do that in a little bit. So we say okay. So we do that, we add an end. And we come to the next one, open it. And this is app auth you, but it's not that, it's an activity. Oh, it's app auth you. And this once again is application, just like the others. Okay. Here we can do this is an end. Okay. And then we have a message, and then we have our database piece, which we will add. And put in our activity. And this is DB auth you. And this is a database component or database piece, so that's the way we'll set it, and we'll say okay. So that takes care of this, and this one's defined all the way down that we can define until we get the rest of it added. Let's go back to the first one, and we'll add the activities underneath on it as well. So if we go into user root, we're going to go here, and we're going to say, it's going to call this SS root view. Now, I should have selected it first. There we go. Now, on the other one, I did not specify whether, I specified that it was application, but I could have said that it was human transactional. All that does is it changes the icon that we're using here, and so that's what I'm going to do on this one, so you can see that there is a different icon that's displayed. And we can say end. But technically what we have is a web browser, so it's actually an application running on the end, but you could do that to make it show that it's human interaction. And as well, if you wanted, you could add a preparation task in front of this if you wanted to show wait time, or more likely between this. Okay, let's go here and do SS. This is another activity. This is application, and we're going to call it SS root web, and say okay. Put an end on it. And we do the next one. Tag activity says root app and its application. Okay. And then we put an end on it. And last, we're going to add the database piece on here, which is activity ss root db, and it is database, so we leave that. We have it there. We put an end on that. And we say OK. All right. So here we go. That defines those pieces of the session start. We have session authenticate, we already did. Let's do catalog selection. Still works basically the same way. In this particular step in catalog selection, right, we're going to have the user's going to do some sort of input. So they're going to do a task, which is going to be user. Let's do user. Let's do CS user catalog select. And then we're going to do, okay, we got that. It's transactional. We say okay. From that, we're going to send a message, because that's the web browser sending a message, a post, or a get, or whatever, and doing a sending a message, which we're going to call CS UMSG. Okay, and then we're going to, from that, we're going to go to the actual web server. We're going to do a task, and it's going to be called web catalog select. And once again, it's logic, so we go okay. We're going to add another task. And that task is going to be called app catalog format. It is logic, and we say OK. Then that will go to a message that is sent to the database server. So this is going to be a message, and we call this message cat SEL MSG. All right. And then we're going to add to that a final task, which is db cat select. Okay. And this, once again, is logic. So we say okay. And then we finish it off by putting an end. Which is there. Okay. Now, each one of these lines is 100% passing, just so you remember that we're taking the default, and that says to pass 100% to the. Now, let's go down here. Here we're going to use an activity. We're going to call this CSU. What do we call it? Select. No, let's make it CS select user. Okay, it's an application. Okay, and once again, I left it as a server. It's strictly what icon is showing it has no effect at this point on what it would be. And we're going to put an end here. Okay. At this point, we go in. We're going to add an activity here. Now this activity is going into web, so this one's CS web select, and it's an application. We're going to say OK. I'm going to put an end on it. Okay. Then we're going to do the app. CS app select, and we're going to call this is again an application, so we'll say OK. Yes, I can't do that, so let's do this. And you can't create a loop. If you create the process is a flow from one end to the other. There are no loops allowed in the process. That's important to note. Lastly, we add the activity for the database. SC DB select, and this is database, so we'll leave it as database so we see that. And we're going to put an end on here. Okay, so that defines all of this as far as we can go for now. So let's go back here and we'll close it, and we'll do our last selection, which is the actual search. Let's add the catalog search. So we start out, as always, the user is going to generate from its browser, and in this one I'm going to make it a human again this time, just to show that as well again. So I'm going to say CS user web. Or no, that's not unique enough. Let's go CS, web cat search. Okay, we say OK. Then we do, from there, we send a message to the web browser. And we're going to call this one cat ser ms no user cs msg. Okay. And then from there, we're going to have the receiving side, which is a web catalog search logic. Okay. From there, we're going to have another task. I'm going to call that app catalog search, and it is logic. And then we'll scroll that over, and we're going to add a message going to the database server, which is a message. And then we're going to say db cat search. Okay. Oh, I don't like that name. I'm going to change that name. So I'm going to go up to the edit. Now I have to have the message complete before it'll let me edit it. So I will add my task on the other side, which is db cat search, and I'll say OK. And then I got to change the name. So instead of DB cat search, let's call this cat server message. Okay. All right, so there we go, cat server message. And we have our DB cat search there, and that's the last one in there, so we're going to do an add. And we say, okay. Now let's go back and add our activities. So here, this is the user. We're going to do an activity, and we're going to say CS. We're going to call this CS user. USER. And it is, let's go ahead and make this human transactional again as well. And we'll put an end on here, and that will end this one. So now we have that, and we have this. We have a message. Let's go in here, and we're going to add to here, we're going to add activity. And this one is called CS Web. And this is an application because it's the web server. So we're going to say OK. And do that here. And then we're going to put an end. OK. Shrink that down. Open this. Here we have the app side of it. And we're going to put an activity in here. And this is going to be CS app search. And it is application still. And we'll take and drag across from it, and we're going to add another end. Now, if you're not overly concerned about the readability of the model, you can leave off the ends, because the ends actually serve no function within the computation of the model. They're actually more for the users to make the flow more understandable. Okay, so we got DB CS DB search. This is database, so we leave it the way it is. So I could leave that off and not put it on there, but it makes it more easier. It's easier for users to relate to it, to know that that's the end of this particular level. Okay, so now we have filled out the entire service view. So we have defined all the way down to the activities, and we're ready to where we need to make connections to the physical, but we haven't defined the physical yet. So let's move on to that. So if we click on implementation view, we will find a Google map. And the Google map allows you to zoom in and set the geographical locations where you have your data centers and your users and such. So for the purposes of this model, we have I'm locating the different pieces in the I'm going to make sure where I'm at here. There we go. I'm locating the web server here in the Google Data Center at this location. So I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to stick it here at the Google Data Center located in Council Bluffs, Iowa. And you don't want to leave a white space in the name. Actually, I guess to make it a little more readable, I'll put Council Bluffs underneath there. You don't want to put a white space in the name because that name gets used internally in the tool and it doesn't handle white spaces well. So don't leave a white space in the name. I think the edits keep you from that, but just a warning. I'm going to put the database piece of the database piece in another data center, another Google data center. The database server is going to be located here. There we go. Berkeley County. It's another Google data center. So now we have that. And I'm going to put our user in Lille, France. In this case. So the web browser is going to be located here in Lille. We'll zoom in a little bit so we can see a little bit about what's going on. And we'll just drop a pin here somewhere. Okay, so we have added our 3 locations that we're going to use in this map. Now, at each one of these locations, I need to add a group. Let's start here at Lille. If I double click on the pin, it opens a dialog to show me the groups, but there are no groups. So I'm going to do new. What I'm creating here is let's call this user 1. And we're going to call it a client site, but you can add your own types and you say okay. And that adds a group there. Now, in that group, I'm going to add, I need to add network pieces. So I have stuff to hook up to. So first off, I'm going to put a router. I'm just going to call it router or RTR. And I'm not going to associate a model with it because we're not going to get that actively involved in the network side of it. But I'm going to add that there. I'm going to add, so by clicking on that and dragging off, I'm going to add a server, okay, which is the, we're going to call this and we'll put it there. And then to that, I have to attach some storage. So I'll put storage on here. And I'll call it user 1. And we'll say OK. And that's our location. And if I wanted to, I could show a user making use of this, although it's not, I can put a human here. And add the user there. And there's the user. I'll make sure that that's not active, okay, because I don't need it in the model. But it's there so you can show it. Okay. As you saw, as you did see a little bit, when I drop down, you have several different types. Okay, so I'm going to go now. I'm going to go to the web, where I'm placing the web server and the application piece of this, and I'm going to open up the Council Bluffs data center. I'm going to say new. I'm going to put cv _dc, and I'm going to call this a data center. And I'm going to say OK. And then I can open it up. And here I can add a router. And once again, I'm going to call it RTR. Okay. And then off of that, I'm going to create a switch, or I'm going to add a network switch. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to call it SW. Let's just call it switch. Okay. And then off of the switch, I'm going to create a server. And we're going to call this app web app SVR. I'm going to say OK. And then off of that, we're going to add some storage. Like that. And we've got that location set up. Now I can go back to the global view because I've defined the group and I've defined the connecting points within the group, which are the routers. I can add a connection between those 2 points. So I can click on there, I can click on here, and I'm going to go from router to router at both those 2 locations. I can specify error rates, overheads, length. Length is calculated already for you. I can specify a protocol if I so desire, if I want it to be MPLS or whatever the case may be, and I say OK, and I have a line connecting. Now if I go in to one of these data centers, you can see now that there is a connector that shows a connection to another point in the map. Let's go back to the global view. We'll go down here to our Berkeley County data center. I'm going to say new, and we're going to call this BC_DC, and it's a data center, and we're going to say OK, and then we're going to open it up, and just like the other one, we'll create a router. We're going to create a switch. And then I'm going to add a server, and this one's going to be database SVR, okay, and it's going to have storage associated with it. Just like that. All right, so now we've got our locations created. Let's go back to the top, to our map, and let's connect it up. Now that we've got places to connect in it. And we go from router to router. Everything's there. We say OK. And there it is. Okay, so now we've done all this pieces. Now what we have to do is we have to go in and we have to make use of a couple of, I'm going to use some library components to provide, to provide what I need for definitions here. So I'm going to go to user client. I'm going to select the storage device first because you have to load storage, provide storage before you load the server. So I select the storage. I'm going to go up here and say edit. Now this is to create a new node. You always have to create the first node in the group view, but after that you can just drag off of existing ones, but you can click on that to create another node if you so desire. This one allows you to edit the hardware of the node. This allows you to change some of the parameters around the node. In this case, I want to import MDL from a file, which is a library component. I want to upload a file, so I'm going to click on that. It's going to open a file chooser. And there is a WebD here that I want to load. Okay. And then here I'm going to do it again because I need to do it for the, and this is going to, we're going to say upload a file. Once again, I'm going to select the same file. Where is it? WebD, open. Okay. And now if I were to check these, I could scroll down here. I can use my storage properties and see that there is web browser LD, which uses a piece of disk for its caching. I can go over here and I can see that in this particular, this is set up as a Sun Enterprise 3000, but it could be a desktop if you wanted to make it whatever. But for the purpose of the model, it makes a little difference. Because it's the web browser that's going. And then you see the web browser here, and that's the web browser component. So we close that, and that pretty much takes care of this particular site. Now, we can go back to the global view. We can go here. We can say, we can open up the Council Bluffs site. I need to add a machine here. I have a machine in my library, component, or a library MDL that has the kind of stuff that I want to use to start out. So I'm going to say import an MDL from a file, upload a file. This particular one is from another job that I've done, and I'm going to go find it here. And I'm going to select it. Where is it? I want this one. Open. All right. And I say okay. Okay. And then I'm going to use this one. Load it. So load the same thing here. Okay. Open that. Load it there. All right. Okay. All right. Now, let's do, I've got, let's see, what have I got? So if I select these, I can go into here, and you can see that this particular thing is running on a Dell, whatever, and it has components, it has lots of components, but the only ones that I'm really interested in is the root, the user API, the default, and then the undefined. The others I can get rid of, so I'm going to select that one and say delete that ACI. I'm going to select that one and say delete that ACI. I'm going to go down here and do the same thing down here, because these are the ones that I'm not really using. And then I'm going to rename that. These are fine as far as the names, except I want to rename this one. So I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to change this one to be lookup. Say OK. And then I want to change this one to be lookup as well. Okay. So now those are defined, and I can say close. Now this is a 16 processor Dell PowerEdge R720. If I want to change the machine, because I've got it selected, I can go up here to edit of the or customize the server, and there is only one complex on there. There's only one machine that makes up this this particular node. So I'm going to edit this one. You can see there's the Dell. If I wanted to change it, that seems to be just about the fastest thing I've got on here. But I could go to, let's make this an IBM. Let's make it, well, there's not very many IBMs in this one. Let's try, we go to the Universal. I could make it a mainframe if I wanted, but I don't think I'm going to do that either. Let's go back. We'll select Dell, because this is basically a Windows machine. That's why it's such a small selection. Power edge, power edge, power edge, power edge. Let's do this 2.7 gigahertz one here and say OK. And then we can change that, close that, and then we can come back and let's just get it, make sure we refresh. So here, this only has 4 processors, but they're slightly faster than the other one. Let's see. I can select this, edit this. Because he has 4 processors, I'm going to make this 4. Okay. I don't know whether he doesn't refresh that, or, but there we go. All right, let's try that again. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so it's 4 logical processors. There's all my things running there. So now we've finished this site. Let's go to the last site, the database site, right here at Berkeley County. Okay, so we open the Berkeley County Data Center by double-clicking on the group. We select the database, we load it. We can select, we select our MDL that we're going to load up. This one happens to be this one right here that I want to use. Okay. And then we'll go here and we'll load it. Import MDL, upload. All right. So now you can see that we have, we can scroll here. We could change the machine like we did before. This is a compact, but I'm going to leave this one alone. But I do need to modify the number of, let's change, let's do this. We'll manage servers, we'll go in here, we'll edit this, and we're going to change this to 12 and say OK. Close. And then I want to come back here and I need to remove this one because I'm not using this one. So I'm going to delete this ACI, and then this one I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call it lookup like we did the others. And we'll say OK. There we go. Now if we close this, let's open it back up. Host dialog. There we see we're using all 12 processors, and there's our groups. So we're ready to go. So now let's go back to our service view. In the service view, if we start down through here again, I'm going to select my activity here. I'm going to edit that activity. I'm going to add an ACI. This is from user 1, and I want to go to the server, and I want to go to the complex, logical servers, and I want the web browser, and I say add select. There we go. So we've now associated that particular web browser with the user. We have to go to the other side of the message because you have to define the 2 sides of the message producer and the message consumers before you can create the message, the actual message. So if I select this, we come in here. This is the root piece of the website. So we go here. We're going to say this is in the Council Bluffs, DC. It's the web app server complex there, and HTTP root is what I want. And so we say add select, and there we go. And we say OK. Now I can select this message. I can come up here, and it says, OK, the root U and root web. If we look, that's the 2 sides. Root web, root U. I'm going to give this a message called, let's make it a little more than that. User root message, add message. There it is. Because there's only a single component in each one of those, it's already selected for me. If there were multiples, I would have to make a selection of which one I wanted specifically. And that creates the message. So now if I click on the message, I can look at the message properties and see it right there. Okay. Then I can go down to, okay, so we've done those two. Let's go to this one. This is the app. We're going to connect it up. We're going to add an ACI. This is still in Council Bluffs, web server, complex, and this is the app root. So we say add selected, still on 100%, so we're saying okay. And that takes care of that. Then we have to go to the other side of the message. Let's add our database side. Add ACI. This is a DC, or BC I should say, database server, complex there, and DB root is what I want. Add select. Say okay. Now that we've defined both sides of this, I define the message. Once again, they show up. This message is called 1, and we're going to add that message. Once again, there's only one, so I don't need to get carried away here. Okay, so that takes care of our first part of the process. The next step. Okay, let's do authentication of the user. So we're going to select here. We go here. The user is going to input in their browser whatever they need to do. So we're going to select this here. Once again, it is the web browser. So we add this select. Add this selection. Say okay. And then we're going to do the other side of this, which is the receive side. Here. Add ACI. Council Bluffs, app server, complex, server instance, user API, add selected. Okay. Fix the message. And we're going to call this, let's just do SAU MSG 1 add. Okay. All right. And we're going to add an ACI here. And the other side of the message, and then we can come back and do the message. Here's on the database. So we're going to go to the database and do this. Add ACI. To the database side, database, come there. And we're going to do user, and we're going to say select. Okay. That takes care of that. Do the message. And we're going to do this SAMSG1, add message. Okay. There we go. And that takes care of that. Let's do the catalog selection next. Once again, we have a user at the web browser piece. So we select user, complex, and web browser, add selected. Okay. And then we're going to go here. And this, we're going to do an add ACI. Default, add selected. Okay. Then here we're going to do the app side of it. select here. We're going to do add ACI. There, there, there. And we need the default piece here. Add selected. Okay, and then we're going to add lastly the database piece of this. And then we'll fix that last message. And then we have just one more piece to add to this to finish the emulator for the selection. Or for this particular type of session. So we select that. And we can call this cat SELMSG1, add message. Okay. All right. And let's shrink this down and do our last one. We open up, we have the human here that's doing making use of the web browser. So we go user, user, complex, and the web browser. Okay. And we say okay. We go to the other side of the message and we add the website of this application, Council Bluffs, app server, complex there, and lookup. Add. Okay. And then we select this to update our message. And we're going to call this one user CSMSG1. Add the message. Okay. And then we need to come here, finish this component, hooking this one up, which is also on the application server. So we go to CB, app server, complex. And now as you can see, it's important that you name things in a way that allows you to make sure you're selecting the correct one. And if you get into some models where you're extremely elaborate, lots of components, and components in parallel and all that, you need to make sure that you can tell one from the other. So now we're on the database side, server, complex there, and lookup, add selected. Okay, and then let's fix the message on this one. Let's call this cat SER MSG1, and we add messages. Okay. And that completes this view. So if I come up here, I'm going to select this, it'll take us back to the corporate view. That should have completed everything. So now we're ready to compute this model. So if I right-click on the model, I see the menu that says results, which is inactive. I have compute log, I have scenarios. I cannot do a scenario of this emulator because the emulator has not been locked yet, and I'm not going to lock it until I'm done and happy with it, which is under properties. You can see it right here. You can check that box and then it's ready, and that enables you to do that. But what we really want to do is compute. So we click on compute. Now we see our catalog management business entity there, and right now it's set to increment. Our arrival rate is 50,000 over an 8-hour period, and we're going to increment that by 50% every increment that we do. So I'm going to add this here, and I'm going to do a single compute just to make sure that I don't have any errors or didn't miss anything. So I'm click on compute. You'll see below, oh, I got an error. 1005, no data in results. Reference values, exporting. Is there something missing? Mode, service time, service time, service time. Beginning model information, CS message defined, but no service defined. CSU message defined. Okay, so I have a service to service that I did not finish. So let's go to here. CSU basically says it's here, and it says CSU is this guy right here. And if we scroll down, or I guess if we come over here, yep, we'll see that we did not add a message. So let's do a CSU MSG1, add message. Say OK. Okay, the message is updated. Okay, so let's select it again. Okay, now let's recompute. We right-click on the model or the emulator. We select Compute. You'll notice that it has our settings from our previous compute, so we don't have to go in and add a selection to the list. We click on Compute to do a single point. Computing. Watch down below, you see the messages down here, and message, the compute finished. So we close the dialog. We see the banner across the top. It shows that there is a critical risk exposure, and from there we're ready to look at the results. We see that we have a DICOM score of 100 and a risk of 78.5. Let's do a multi-point, just to show you how this works. We can do a multi-point compute. As before, we said we want to increment by 50% for each point. So if I set this to be 5 points, and we say compute, you can watch down below and see as it computes the 5 different points. We're already doing point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, and it's done. So from this, once again, you can go look. We see that right from the beginning it has a problem, so that point is highlighted. We can go look at the graphs from the dashboard to see what that looks like. There we go. You can see the cost, efficiency, the dynamic complexity, the production efficiency, and the cost to deliver all. And then there are several other types of results which we'll get into in another video. Thank you for your attention.